What is up, YouTube? Welcome to PanFro Games. In today's video, we are reviewing Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom for the Nintendo Switch. And the cool thing about this game is we actually get to be Zelda as the main character, and that hasn't happened in such a long time, ever since Zelda's CDI, that it might as well be the first time. And Zelda makes a fantastic debut as the main character, and by the end of the journey, I much rather see Zelda be the main character in a 2D game than see Link take the role again. The game begins with Link saving Zelda, but at the last second, Ganon pulls Link into the Rift World, and Zelda's all alone. And normally Zelda isn't too useful in these situations. However, she meets her new friend named Tri, and Tri hooks her up with this magical staff, and she can now have the power to summon echoes. And Zelda needs to go around all of Hyrule, close the rifts in every zone, and try to save her family and to save Link. Now, Tri is not only just a new character who talks to you throughout the game, which is actually pretty cool because Zelda does actually talk, which is nice to have a character that has some sort of agency in the story, which I really did get attached to Zelda much more than I did to Link in previous games, because Link is a mute protagonist. But Tri also is tied to the gameplay in the sense that Tri is how you summon echoes. Now, echoes are copies of enemies or objects that you find in the world. So if you defeat an enemy, you can walk up to it and you can copy it, and now you can summon that enemy wherever, whenever you want, as long as you have enough Tri pieces to use it. And you start the game with 3 Tri pieces on Tri, and you can further level up Tri and get more pieces attached to Tri, and you can get up to 6 pieces. And also sometimes some of your echoes get discounted throughout the game. And there's a lot of different echoes. So not only is there enemies, there are objects. You can summon platforms like pieces of water, like clouds. You can do boxes. You can do beds, which you can jump into a bed and heal yourself. And there's just a lot of different combinations that you can do. And there's 127 echoes in the game that allow you to fight enemies or solve puzzles in unique and interesting ways. Now, what I love about the echo system is the fact that you have so much player expression, and it's very similar to Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, where you can see a puzzle and you can solve it in so many different ways. But what I really like about it in this game is I never felt like I was actually breaking the puzzle or completely like cheating the system. It felt like there was a nice containment to it because I was limited to how much I could spawn based on how many Tri pieces I had on Tri, and each object or enemy I spawn would have a certain cost to them associated with it. But it does get towards like the end of the game where I really am speeding through a lot of puzzles because I just figured out a lot of great strategies to use different objects together with like elevator platforms, or a platform that will take me all the way across the screen, but it'll break if it hits anything along the way. So eventually, while you're playing through the game, you'll get a lot of these really OP objects that will make the game a lot easier for sure. But the beginning of the game is definitely difficult, and it's honestly a very linear experience in the beginning for about the first 2 hours. But once you clear the first dungeon, you are freely allowed to explore the open world, and you have 2 major dungeons to do right off the bat after you clear that first one. And from there, I would highly recommend exploring and taking it all in. You're going to find secrets throughout the map. You're going to find little caves that you can explore, get your heart pieces, get more different objects that you can summon or enemies to summon. And some objects, some enemies are incredibly rare. So if you do explore, you will find something of value that can make your next dungeon experience a lot easier. I certainly found some OP stuff earlier, completely accidentally, and it really made my time a lot more enjoyable, and also allowed me to have a better time, in the dungeon crawling sections of this game. Now, speaking of dungeons, yes, there are proper dungeons in this game. There are a total of 8 major dungeons in this game. The first dungeon is more like your tutorial. After that, you have 2 split dungeons, and the game just gives you the freedom to pick which dungeons you want to do. This happens towards the beginning, but also it happens towards the end as well, and you can just pick how you want to play with the dungeon order. Now, the dungeons are all pretty well made. The dungeons in general are, some of them just entirely take place within the dungeon, but some of them also take place in like outside parts or within the general area too. And within these mission structures, you're going to be pretty much traveling throughout these entire regions, doing little rifts here and there, which will eventually lead to your dungeons. And these dungeons, of course, they have mini bosses, they have boss fights, they give you new loot, you get the heart containers, and they're overall just really great test of your knowledge of how to use your echoes, whether they're the offensive ones or your object ones in general. Now, I gotta say, there's a lot of great side content too. Not only is there the 8 main dungeons, there's 2 additional side dungeons that you can do that are optional. There's a bunch of side quests that can be found in each village, which I recommend checking out the different villages and talking to NPCs. They got a lot of funny stuff to say, and I think the writing is pretty good for these characters. I just love how Zelda interacts with these different characters throughout the world. Now, not only is there's echoes at your control, you do have the ability to use Try as the arm ability from Tears of the Kingdom, and you can just grab heavy objects and just move them. This is one way to solve a bunch of different puzzles, but it's also pretty useful in combat as well. And not only are you going to be using that ability in combat, but you can use the power of Link for a limited time, use your sword, and eventually you can upgrade that and get more energy, use the bow and other Link's abilities in combat. And this is how you're going to take down most of the enemies, harder enemies like bosses. And it's really cool. It's a nice little buff that you get. You never really feel this powerful in a regular Zelda game, in my opinion. But going from Zelda, who has no regular attacks, she has to rely on either throwing objects or summoning monsters, to having a sword and shield and just going sicko mode, and then you still have your echoes on the field attacking the boss. It gets really awesome, and I just have never felt this type of moment in a Zelda game before. But overall, the gameplay is really solid. I think they nailed it for a 2D Zelda game. And I will say that it is on the Link's Awakening engine, which the performance isn't the best. Sometimes I get some slowdown. This 30 FPS isn't smooth or stable at times, but that is a little bit problematic. And I do think the game is well sized. It's about a 20-hour adventure. Could be 30 hours depending over 100%, or it could be about 15 hours if you just beeline the main story. So depending on what type of gamer you are, it's going to be a lot of good content. But unfortunately, there is no replay value. There is no New Game Plus. You can start the game on hard mode, which is pretty nice. But I wish there was a New Game Plus. Essentially, when you beat the game, it just reloads you to your last save, and then you can just go do things before you beat the game. So they do that, which is a little bit disappointing in my opinion. I think this game would have really benefited from that, but there is a lot of content in this game in general, from the side content to finding all the collectibles and just, you know, living in this great world. So overall, this being one of the last Switch exclusives to release on the console before we see some sort of Switch 2 in the future, this is definitely a must-buy game for Nintendo fans. And on the PanFro game scale, I'm going to give this an 8.5 out of 10. This is a great experience for sure. Definitely worth picking up at some point. And of course, guys, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new. I really appreciate it. Catch you guys next time. Peace out and have a good one.